The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We're talking best players on the worst teams. We're going to be joined by Josh Mahler to talk all things AL East and other Major League Baseball news. And then we'll close it all down with your ever so favorite ads and drops segment. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show.
Play ball!
Welcome into the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, Righteous Felon Jerky, and Mahler Bros Golf. I'm your host, Vince Stover, and I am joined by the senior fantasy baseball writer from BellyUpFantasySports.com, Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And, you just exposed me to the guy that got hit straight in the face with the baseball, so I'm doing much better than he is. So life is good here, and it was supposed to rain this weekend. It did not. So life in Texas, we're all good.
Yeah, it got hot this week. I was outside at work, and I missed the cool weather. The grass is dying already, so yeah, no rain here either. So
okay.
But hey, it is raining hot takes and fantasy baseball world here on the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We do want to welcome in our live viewers watching on the Sports Stove YouTube page and those viewing on the Belly Up Fantasy Facebook page, as well as all those listening later via the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Kev, we got a good guest coming up in a few minutes, but first, we're going to have our Fantasy Burner segment. The Fantasy Burner segment is presented by Mahler Bros Golf. We all want to look good on the golf course, but it often comes at the expense of feeling good. Mahler Bros Golf has polos that look good and feel good. Their polos are guaranteed to make you look better, but it's up to you to golf better. And on a hot summer day on the golf course, there's no polo that you'd rather wear than Mahler Bros Golf signature polos. So don't wait to try out your new favorite golf apparel. Upgrade your golf attire at MahlerBros.com. That's MAHLERBROS, MahlerBros.com. Use the code BELLYUP to get 15% off your purchase. Turn heads on the course or wherever you wear Mahler Bros polos. Mahler Bros Golf. Look good, feel good, play good. And we're going to actually be joined by one of the Mahler brothers, one of the Mahler Bros here in just a few minutes. But
all right.
First, let's get into our Fantasy Burner segment, which is the segment where we kind of hit one topic relatively quickly here to get things started. And today we wanted to look at players on bad teams that are still fantasy relevant. And specifically, I mentioned in our earlier chat this week, looking at the Oakland A's, the Kansas City Royals, and the Washington Nationals, because those are teams that I don't look to go get players from because of how bad they are, but there are still players there being relevant and helping out fantasy teams. So let's get started here with good players on bad teams. And Kevin, I'll let you start off with the player and team of your choice.
All right, so I'm going to start off with the Washington Nationals, and there are a couple of places you could go with that, unbelievably enough. But I'm going to go with Keibert Ruiz, the catcher, because, catcher can always be a frustrating position in fantasy baseball. Maybe not so much this year as in times past, but still pretty frustrating. But Keibert Ruiz, he's right around 50% owned. But I don't know if you saw against my Dodgers, no less, the other day, he had 2 home runs. He had 3 RBIs, and he had 3 runs scored and 16 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
So he has 7 homers on the year, 24 RBIs, 17 runs scored. And you will certainly use that as a catcher if you need one. So he is going to start off my segments right here.
I like it. He went yard 3 times against LA, twice in one game, of course, like you just mentioned.
Right, and he went yard the day before that. That's correct.
Yeah.
So 3 homers in 2 days, in Dodger Stadium, which, as we know, is a pitcher's park, but he still hit 3 home runs.
He sure did, and he's only gotten negative points twice in the last 15 days, excuse me, and he's played all but 3 games in that stretch as well.
And that's
all
the
catchers
key
are
as a
going to have
catcher.
days off.
Yeah. So if you get a guy that's in your lineup 5-6 days a week at the catcher position, you are certainly doing pretty well.
Yeah, I like that pick. I'm going to look and talk about Mackenzie Gore. He's a guy we've talked about on this program before. He's leading the Nationals in points in fantasy points leagues with 156 points. He's the starting pitcher, only owned by 25% of teams in ESPN leagues, but he's had some great pitching opportunities this year. 80 strikeouts on the year. His win-loss record isn't good, but he pitches for the Nationals. But he's putting up points, 3.66 ERA. So he's actually, he's holding his own there. And he's done it against some decent teams as well. And, I look at the Nationals, I've talked about Lane Thomas. We talked about him last week a little bit too. And I like Lane Thomas. They're doing okay. Candelario's having an okay year as well, fantasy-wise. But I looked at this team and I said, man, if there's a guy from the Nationals that I would pick out of all of them, it would actually be on the pitching side of things, Mackenzie Moore, just because of what he's given. It's again 64 innings pitched to 80 strikeouts is pretty amazing. 6 quality starts to start off the year as well. So a lot of good things going on for him. And I think the Nationals, they're a team that do not interest me in any way as far as in real baseball to watch them or anything like that. No. But they do have guys that are producing. And so you can find some guys down there on the Nationals team and find someone that can help your fantasy team out there as well. I'll go to the next team, Kevin, and let's go ahead and go to Oakland. They're the worst team in the league. They're number 30 on the Sports Stove MLB Power Rankings for Week 10.
And that's well
and have been there pretty much all year long. And, it's interesting. They actually have a couple of different guys you could look at. But I'm going to go with the guy who's been better as of late, and that's first baseman Ryan Nada. The last 2 weeks, he's actually been the highest scoring fantasy player on the team, and he is available in our league. He's available in 99.2% of all leagues out there, only owned in 0.8% of ESPN leagues, and he's not great. No one in Oakland is. And I looked at Estrella Ruiz. He's been stealing bases like he's on Grand Theft Auto. I mean, it's been just nonstop. Brent Rooker had good moments.
He leads the majors in stolen bases.
Yeah, Shea Langeliers is fine at catcher, but I like what Ryan Noda's doing, and I think he's a guy that can produce some value for your fantasy team as well. He's got 6 home runs and 2 stolen bases. Not a lot, of course, but he's producing, especially as of late. So that's the guy I like in Oakland. How about you?
Okay, so I'm going to go with the guy, and I'm kind of giving away my article that's coming out tomorrow, but he's 3% owned, and I'm talking about a pitcher, no less, J.P. Sears, and I don't know what the J and the P stand for, to be quite honest with you, but the Yankees lit him up for 5 runs. Since then, against Texas, and that's notable because as we talked about pre-game, they've scored 27 runs in their last 2 games. He held them to 2 runs on 5 hits. Next at Houston, no less, 2 runs, 5 hits. At Seattle, 1 run, 3 hits. Against Atlanta, another good hitting team, 1 run, 4 hits. Now, he's not a strikeout guy, so don't be looking for that, but he doesn't walk a lot of people. And he doesn't even have a win on the season. But This is what he's done. He scored 13, 18, 10, 15 fantasy points. Mm-hmm. So if you need help on your pitching rotation, and he starts tomorrow against Pittsburgh Pirates, who have kind of throttled back which nobody's surprised by. But that sets him up for a 2-start week. So I would certainly look in J.P. Sears direction if you need pitching help and somebody that's widely available. So he is my Oakland A's selection.
Yeah, I like him, especially in deeper leagues, 12-man, 14-man leagues. I think he's a guy that brings a lot of value. In your 10-man league, you got to have to be hurting at pitcher to go to an Oakland A. But He is producing. There's no doubt about that.
He is producing, and so and he's like you said, he's on a bad team.
Yeah.
And I just cannot believe that I'm actually talking about a pitcher. It's June that does 0 wins.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's crazy, but he's earned it. So That's my selection right there.
All right, give me your Kansas City guy.
My Kansas City guy, which is another dude that surprises me to no end. This is way the other direction. He's a veteran guy who has been around for, I don't know, since Nixon was president, something like that. But I'm talking about Zach Greinke, pitcher, Kansas City Royals. And so he's 5% owned. And this is what he's done over his last 6 starts. No runs, 3 runs, 2 runs, 2 runs, 1 run, no run. He has 115 fantasy points on the season. He has won just 1 game. Unbelievably enough, he's 1-5 on the season. But Tuesday he goes and he pitches against the Miami Marlins in Miami. And Miami is a sorry excuse for an offensive ballpark. I've never seen it. I understand it's a nice ballpark to be in inside and all that, but it holds down hitters. So if you're, once again, needing pitching, look in his direction. If for no other reason, this start right here. And like I said, 5% owned, and he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing out there. And he's only walked 3 guys in these 6 starts that I'm talking about. So he doesn't beat himself by putting guys on base. So he is there's a lot of guys who probably could pick. Well, not a lot, but there are a few from Kansas City that you could select. But he is my pick in this category.
Greinke's a great example of a guy who's valuable in points leagues and not in categories leagues. Categories why he's not going to give you wins. He's not going to give you strikeouts.
No, he's not going to give you wins.
But in a points league, he still adds
most
it up.
Strikeouts he has during that same period.
Yeah.
But, like you said, in points leagues, he's giving those. No negative points anywhere, shape, or form. So Miami, that's the start that you could definitely take advantage of.
I'm going to go with a guy that has actually answered the call this year, a guy that everybody was in on, and unlike MJ Melendez, actually came through so far this season. It's first baseman Vinny Pasquantino. Leads the team in points for fantasy points. He is 9 home runs. He's only struck out 30 times, which is basically the best on his team right now, percentage-wise at the very least. And he's having a great year. He's, again, doing what he was supposed to do. Everybody was expecting MJ Melendez to have this great year, and he didn't. Perez has been decent. Bobby Witt's been good again. But Pasquantino's been it in Oakland, or in Kansas City, excuse me. So that's my pick. So there you go. Good players on bad teams. There's a couple for you to look at for your fantasy team. Pasquantino will not be available.
Right. And just because they're on a certain team does not mean, whatever reason, and don't kryptonite.
Yeah.
Right. If they can help you out in fantasy, that's all that's important.
I acquired Pasquantino in a league earlier this year. I traded who did I trade? Michael Harris and Pete Alonso, and I got Corbin Burns and Vinny Pasquantino. That trade's worked out just fine for me with Michael Harris.
Yeah, until Corbin Burns gets thrown out of ball game.
Right. No, it was after he was done. It was okay. We'll talk about that more.
I saw that he got thrown out, but he was done for the day anyway.
He was done. All right, that's our Fantasy Burners segment. It's now time for our guest segment we call the Call to the Pin. Our guest segment, our Call to the Pin, is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. If you want the purest jerky in the game, you got to go straight to the source. Righteous Felon has partnered with the best natural black Angus beef producers in the land to lock up supply and guarantee the best tasting, best textured, and freshest beef jerky on the market. Go to righteousfelon.com. Use promo code BELLYUP. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. And joining us now for the first time on this program is a co-host of a Belly Up podcast, rising to the occasion. He's also does a lot in the Belly Up world, and he's also a Mahler bro, which we talked about in our previous segment as well. Josh Mahler joins the show. Josh, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing
We're
very
doing
good,
good.
man. Glad to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on. I want to talk now. This segment is presented by Righteous Felon. Our previous segment, though, was presented
By
by
you.
Mahler Bros Golf. And so, before we get into the baseball talk, tell us a little bit about everything going on at Mahler Bros.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly started as just something, I more or less a dream, but then, it became more of a reality whenever I started exploring and kind of researching more and kind of finding out how I could find a really comfortable polo that I could also find, for me personally, I can design the polos and then kind of distribute that to other people. And so kind of something that I've always enjoyed on the golf course is just I guess the attire that you get to wear. You get to wear kind of the crazy polos and the crazy colors and designs and everything. But of course, that's not always the case for everybody. Some people just like to kind of keep the nice and subtle designs and everything. And that's kind of what we keep. And so we can kind of explore around. And so it just kind of started off as just kind of, like I said, a dream, and started exploring into how I could make this brand. And it was between me and my brother. And we ended up creating our own golf polo brand and kind of going from there, and started off really small, and it's kind of slowly growing as time goes on. So it's been exciting, been a lot of fun to kind of create my own brand.
Definitely. And again, that's MahlerBros.com. Use the code BELLYUP, get 15% off your purchase there as well. I see you wearing a Sooners shirt. So are you following the softball stuff? What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a diehard for the softball team. I've been following them for probably 4 or 5 years since they really
We
came
haven't
on
lost
the
the
scene.
game probably since you started following them.
Yeah. So I mean, it's been a big dynasty here recently, and chasing for a three-peat.
Nice. Very, very awesome. All right. So let's get into some baseball talk. And we're going to talk about the AL East a bit with you tonight because of your fandom. So talk about how did you come about to pick your Major League Baseball team, and how long have you been cheering them on?
So I'm a fan of the Red Sox. It started back, I think, in third grade. I think I was on a little league team where I was on the Red Sox team, and it just kind of kicked off a fandom since then. I didn't really have an MLB team per se, and I had some family members, some cousins that were Red Sox fans too, so that kind of made it easy. Supported them for quite a few years. I kind of fell out of baseball altogether just because I was a football player and a wrestler, and so I feel like right around maybe my sophomore year, I didn't really watch too much baseball, and then kind of leading up till maybe, I don't know, 3 years ago, I think I really started kicking back into it. And this year I decided, I'm getting hardcore onto MLB and trying to keep up with the league, as hard as I can anyways, and try to get back into the game. So I feel like this year I made my statement kind of on our show. I said, I haven't really been a baseball fan. I've always kind of paid attention to the league, but not really been a hardcore fan. And so I said, I've got to pick a team. I'm going to go back to my Red Sox.
Yeah, that's similar to what I did. I came growing up. Now I'm a fair amount older than you, but when the strike hit back in the day, I was kind of like, all right, fine, I'm done with these baseball people. But I got through college and got into adult life, and I was like, I need a baseball team. So I started cheering on the Brewers because I was in Nashville and the minor league affiliate was there, and knew all the players at the time, the Prince Fielders and the Corey Harts and people like that. And so dove into the Brewers and have been there ever since. But I understand that getting away for a little bit and then coming back to it is a lot of fun. Now you look at the Red Sox right now. Worst case, you go, man, they're last place in the East. But then you look at their record and you're like, well, should they be a half game back in the Central? They would be right there in the hunt in the West. And hard to believe that 11 games back in the East was still second best in many of the other divisions. What was the expectation for you as a Red Sox fan coming into the season for the Red Sox this year?
Yeah, so like I said, I wasn't really a fan prior years, probably the last several years, but I was always kind of keeping up with specifically the Red Sox because that was still kind of my team that I kind of owned. And so I knew coming into this year, I knew pitching was going to be an issue. And I knew that I couldn't really expect too much. Picking up Rafael Devers, I think was a huge pickup, and it's proven on the field and everything. But I didn't really have too much of an expectation. I also didn't expect the offense to explode as much as they did. Really, kind of maybe earlier in the season, but there was several times where I'd be betting the over on them, knowing that I'm probably betting a safe bet here. And so I mean that's I think their offense has exceeded expectations. their defense, I feel like, has kind of met expectations, and that's not saying too much for the Red Sox right now. I feel like they've been on a down slope here for a while now. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like you said, it's tough because you do look at where they're sitting at in their division, but overall in the league, I think they're 13th or 14th in power rankings right now. And really, I mean, to sit in the last in the AL East, it's not really that bad whenever you're looking at how good the AL East is this year with the Rays on their tear, and of course the Yankees are now kind of starting to bounce back up where we expected them to be at towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah, definitely. Now, if you go to bellyupsports.com, you can find my latest power rankings that just got posted earlier this afternoon. Red Sox are sitting at 13. So, yeah, I've got them right there in that same range as well. Yeah. And you're right. Offense, they have the second highest runs scored in the East, but they also have the highest runs against in the East. Yeah. And that's exactly what you were just talking about. The offense has been good. Pitching and the defense has had its issues. And that's where you sit. They're plus 12 run differential, but that's, again, last in the East where they are. And you got the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Orioles, who have been really good, and, of course, the Rays, who started off so incredibly hot and have yet to really cool off yet this year as well. And so when you're in a division like that, so, again, I'm a Brewers fan. We're in the NL Central. There's, we're not afraid of the Pirates, and we're just excited the Cardinals stink. So, there's not a whole lot of sweating, a whole lot of things, going on there. But in the AL East, every single one of these teams is probably going to be deserving of a playoff spot. They're not all going to get it, but they're going to be deserving of a playoff spot. And what's the hope right now, or the anticipation right now, for you as a Red Sox fan of, the kind of, can they make a run and make the playoffs, or are they always going to be behind what's going on in the East?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make a run. I think they've played pretty well against the Rays overall, and I know they've lost, I think, 2 so far against them, but or I guess they lost 2 and won 1 if I remember correctly. And so they're playing pretty well against really the best team in the league right now, and so that kind of gives you some hope. And you kind of look through their schedule. I know they've got the Guardians coming up. I know the Yankees isn't going to be an easy task, but I mean, you've got some like the Rockies, I know, coming up, and even the Twins, that you can really put together some wins and really start to add those up. And so, I mean, I think there is some hope, but I think just the fact that you're coming away, if you can end the season better than 500, I feel like that's a win for this season. Because, like I said, expectations weren't high for Boston fans. They shouldn't have been, anyways. If they were, they were maybe expecting a little too much from the team. But I definitely think, if you can end the season above 500, you're better than half the league there, and sitting in a pretty good spot going into next season, I think.
Kevin, I agree with Josh on that. A 500 season for Boston successful this year. What do you think about that statement?
Yeah. I agree with that 100%, especially given the division, as we talked about, that they're in. And so, Josh, my question to you is, Yankees, Red Sox, is that as intense a rivalry as it's ever been, or is that starting to maybe slack off a little bit right there, because, the Red Sox, they're in last. So, but is that still an intense rivalry to the fans?
Yeah, I know when I was younger, it was definitely a big rivalry. And even before my time, it was even bigger. But I feel like even when I was younger, in the early 2000s, and even up to like maybe the early 2010s, it was a very intense. But yeah, like you said, it's just with the Red Sox being as down as they have, I don't feel like it is, but I'm also not really surrounded. I live in the Midwest, so I'm not really surrounded by Yankees fans. I'm more surrounded by Royals fans or Twins fans, and they don't really have too much of a say and who's further down the totem pole at the moment. So I haven't really been around that rivalry, physically, but I think just by kind of the atmosphere and what I've seen, I don't really expect it to be too much of a rivalry until maybe, like I said, and I think I'm just being kind of an optimistic fan and for the future, just because I know I'm already exceeding expectations for this year. So that's why I kind of look forward to next year and kind of going on from there. I think that rivalry can reamp whenever the Red Sox are really showing up and actually winning games.
I look at the team right now and I go, okay, going into the season, me and Kevin talked about this before the season started. Like Tampa Bay is a team you look at on paper and you go, they'll be okay, whatever. But you can never bet against Tampa because
Don't
Tampa
do it,
always
you'll
is
lose
there
money.
at the end. And now I want to know, what's your respect level for Tampa being in the division? Are they a team that are scary, or are they a team that you look at and go, how are they doing that?
I mean, kind of both, really. I mean, they're scary because you don't know how they're doing it. You look at them and sitting under your salary cap and still being able to put up the wins that they're pulling off, and not just the quantity of wins, but even the quality of wins that they've put up here recently, and putting up quality wins against a good Red Sox team. I think that's easy to say. Just looking at their schedule and seeing how the Rays have done what they've done, again, with what they're doing it with. I think it's scary with how they're doing it, and it's really, really cool to see that story. Because, like you said, we kind of talked about the MLB on our show as well, kind of going into the season, and the Rays were not at the top of the list for teams to kind of look at and maybe fear, just because they don't really have a whole lot as far as names on the roster, but they're putting the talent together, and I think the management has done an incredible job with it.
Yeah,
Especially
100%.
playing in that dumpster of a ballpark that they play in. The fact that they're there every single year, and like I said before, I've said it many times, if you bet against the Rays to make the playoffs, that's a silly bet to make.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So I grew up in the Nashville area, and when David Price was still there in Tampa, there was already talk about them moving to Nashville. And that's been a while now, and there's still talk about them being moved.
They were talking about moving to Montreal and who knows where else.
Yeah, but
Price still down there.
Price played high school ball just south of Nashville, and actually in the town that I grew up in, and so that was always going to be a cool thing for Nashville to get David Price. Of course, then he left, and he wasn't the player he was back in Tampa. But nonetheless, it's interesting that you have a team that's been in this kind of disarray for so long. And talk about them moving cities and all this kind of stuff. And yet here they sit in the playoffs every year. And this year, the best team in Major League Baseball through the month of May, they're still sitting under 20 losses. They're at 19 losses, 42 and 19.
Yep.
Interim
play today, 120 plus run differential.
Yeah, 122, second in the league behind Texas, who nobody saw that coming either. They've scored 355 runs. Second best in the league. They've only allowed 233 runs, which is top 4 or 5 in the league this year as well. So they've done it with pitching and hitting, and they've done what they need to do. Let's go to Baltimore, though. Baltimore's this team, young, up and coming. I don't know how their pitching staff has survived this point in the season, but they've got enough of their offense to win games, and they sit second place in the division. So you already look at the Yankees, who are tough, the Rays, who are consistent, Toronto, who has a loaded roster, and it's Baltimore that's making this run in the AL East right now. So again, and I know that your following hasn't been for super long, but how disappointing is it for a team in the East to go, man, now Baltimore's good?
Yeah, I mean, that's disappointing, but I mean, I guess it's kind of exciting at the same time, because you know that if you do reach that level where you're above 500 and playing well, maybe if you can get up into the maybe 60% win percentage or something like that, then you're doing really well if you're in a league that's that good, in a division that good. But yeah, I mean, Baltimore too, the crazy thing is too with them, I don't really know what pitcher you look at and call their go-to guy, their ace, because like they've got so many guys that are really good at pitching between. They've got Wells, Bautista's done really well. They've got probably 3 or 4 guys that you could stick at the mound and say, go for it.
You can even bring up the name Dean Kremer.
Yeah.
As a guy we could talk about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've had some really, really good pitching overall. I mean, just all over. So whoever they throw on the mound, you kind of got to be worried about them.
Yeah, their bullpen has been phenomenal. The starting pitching, I actually wrote in the power rankings this week. Like, I just don't see how the starting pitching is going to hold up. But for now, they're playing well, and you got to give it to them. Got to give them credit where it's due. That's a wild thing.
I think even on their offense, it's kind of been the same too. Where you look at teams maybe like I'll use the Yankees for an example. You look at guys like their Aaron Judge, that's their batter, but you don't really have a singled out batter on the Orioles either. That's what's making them so good.
Especially with Gunnar Henderson struggling like he has.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gunnar Henderson, who just became available in our league, or no, maybe not our league, another league. Sorry, I dropped him in a league recently to bring back Manny Machado. Anyways, has nothing to do with this show.
Yeah,
I
my
love
question
what
about the
Baltimore's doing.
Orioles, Josh, is they just lost Cedric Mullins.
Yeah.
To the IL. Actually saw that play live. He's on my fantasy team, so that kind of killed me inside a little bit. So, how big a loss is that to them?
I mean, it's definitely significant, but like I said, I think with how well-rounded they are, I think it's a tough loss. It's definitely one that you don't want to lose a key player, a star player like that. But with the way that your fourth and fifth guy is going to step up on their team, that's what's kind of been shocking to me is just how many guys can have their name called several times in one night, and then the next night have another guy have his name called so much, and so. Yeah, I think it's definitely a tough loss. It hurts the team, but the good thing for Baltimore is that it's not going to hurt him as bad as if they were relying so much on him.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're built to last. I think Baltimore is. I think the whole division is. I think there's areas of improvement that are needed on all the teams. I mean, shoot, New York's pitching hasn't been that great, but again, their offense has been good enough. To this point, Toronto, I like Toronto's roster probably as good as any roster in that division. But, they've all got areas to improve on, and Boston staying in the hunt, still a game above 500 right now in the East, even though they're 11 back from Tampa from there. Josh is a co-host on the Rising to the Occasion podcast, found on the Belly Up Podcast Network. It's a great show, well done, and the kind of show that I like. Not as much of the more traditional, I should say it that way, I guess is the nicest way to put it,
right.
Than some of the other Belly Up.
Not as theatrical.
Not as theatrical as some of the others. Some people like that. That's fine. But Josh, I like your show. Tell the folks about Rising to the Occasion, where they can find it, and anything else in regards to content you're putting out.
Yeah, best way to find us, you can find us on YouTube, pretty much all social media platforms. I think if you search Rising to the Occasion, we'll probably pop up, and then also rising2.com. That's risingto.com, and we've got all of our content on there too. But we're mainly just a sports show, like you said. We're not too theatrical. I'm kind of I'm a very outgoing person if I know who I'm talking to, but I'm kind of bashful a little bit, and so I'm not super theatrical, but we definitely have fun on the show. We try to add new segments and stuff like that, and new stuff to the show to try to draw in and make it fun for our listeners and stuff. But we like to cover all sports. We've gone as far as covering golf to football to baseball to pretty much anything on the list. We've even talked quite a bit about softball here recently too, because of my bias towards my Sooners. So it's a lot of fun. We enjoy it.
Well, if they won 51 straight games, you can be biased from here till Timbuktu. It's okay.
Yeah. And even biased aside, it's tough to beat the Sooners. I mean, you saw it yesterday. Run ruling really the toughest team on the schedule.
Because this is a Clemson house, and of course they played them to get to the World Series, and they were 1 out away from beating the Sooners, and of course it didn't happen. Yeah,
you just can't ever count them out.
Nope.
Kevin, did you say you're a Clemson house, or they were playing in Clemson's house?
No, this right here is a Clemson house.
Kevin, we have to have a conversation sometime, man. I don't understand your sports allegiances at all.
Well,
but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
So that's great, Vince, because this came up because I was on the No Credentials Required show the other day, and we were talking about the Florida Panthers. Of course, we're talking about the NHL final, right? And so, as I explained, this here is a cat house, right? We got cat, okay, and we support cats. Not dogs, none of that. And so I am obligated, it's right there in the marriage contract, all right, that I will support cat teams. And so we were watching a football game, actually, between the Miami Hurricanes and Clemson Tigers. And, of course, they got that paw right in the middle of the field. And my wife came walking in, and she said, "That looks so cool." Okay. And up to that point, because, I was, a storm, that interests me not. So I was a Hurricanes guy. Well, that switched immediately over to the Clemson Tigers. So that's how that happened.
That's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I'm learning things. I've been doing shows with Kevin
So-
for 3 years now. And
There you go. So,
Unbelievable.
I'm a complicated individual. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Josh, we appreciate you coming on. I want to remind everybody, Rising to the Occasion, you find it on YouTube or rising2to.com, and then also MahlerBrosGolf.com as well, even though this segment's produced by Righteous Felon. They'll be okay if we give you some extra push today. But MahlerBrosGolf.com, and there's shirts, there's tumblers, there's T-shirts, there's all kinds of things on the website so people can check out, find something they like as well.
That's right.
And again, Josh.
So, Josh, what's your favorite colored golf shirt?
Ooh.
My favorite what?
Color.
I mean, my favorite color is red. I'm biased there. I've always liked red. That's my favorite color. So I got to stick with red.
Okay.
Right. You wear the Sunday red on the golf course.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I like I've got a red digital camo and a red a regular red camo too. That I like wearing those. Those are probably two of my favorites to wear out. So it's between those, and then I've also got a gray polo with kind of a little golf designs on the sleeves and on the collar that I like. I think those are my two favorites.
Nice. Very good. Well, Josh, we appreciate you taking some time to chat baseball with us today on the Sports Show Fantasy Baseball Show. We'll look forward to having you on down the road again as well. Continued good luck to you the shirt business and with the show as well. Like I said, it's a really, really well done show. So hope people will go check it out. Josh, we sure appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Josh.
All right, we'll see you. That is Josh Mahler from Rising to the Occasion podcast and MahlerBros.com. All right, let's get into segment number 3. I guess I should give Righteous Felon a shout out one more time. Make sure you go to righteousfelon.com for Righteous Felon Jerky. You use Belly Up as your promo code for 15% off. Now let's get into our final segment, the Fantasy Focus. Our Fantasy Focus segment is presented by BellyUpFantasySports.com, your one-stop shop for all things fantasy sports, NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA, and whatever else you could think of. It's all on BellyUpFantasySports.com. And we come to this segment, we're always talking ads and drops. And so I had a hard time finding drops this week, Kevin.
I had to search far and wide as well. I did find some.
Okay. So, I got 2 drops. Let's go drops first this week. We usually go ads first. Let's make people listen a little longer.
So let me switch over then.
Okay.
No worries. We can do drops. So there we go. And so I have one that's coming right up the bat. So
all right, who you got?
Okay, so my guy that I've absolutely had everything. He was been on my team most of the season. However, I can no longer support, and it's tough to support because he's a New York Yankee. First of all, second of all, and he plays first, second, and third. So the guy I'm talking about is DJ LeMahieu. All right, and so this is what he's done this week. He had 2 points, -1, 1 didn't even play, 1 -2. And he's 60% owned, and he's got only 80 fantasy points on the season. And I like versatility as much as anyone out there in fantasy baseball. But if you're not playing well, that means absolutely nothing. So, and if you're on the Yankees and can't score runs, then things are especially dark to me when it comes to DJ LeMahieu. So I cut him, and he's still adrift in our league, so he had to go.
I'm going to stick on the Yankees roster, Kevin. A guy that I actually pushed for adding and holding on to earlier in the season. At this point, it can no longer be on a roster, and he's still on a roster actually in our league. But it's Anthony Volpe, the shortstop.
Okay, that's
one more point than DJ LeMahieu. He's got 1 less run than DJ LeMahieu. He was stealing bases, 13 stolen bases on the season, but he's striking out a lot, 71 strikeouts on the year as well.
You cannot have a shortstop. That's an aspect of baseball I don't understand, where you have a shortstop who has no power, striking out that much.
Yeah, and 10 of his last 13 games, he scored 0 or negative points. It just has not been pretty for Volpe. I like him. I think long term, he's still going to be a guy
Yeah,
that can be
if you're in a
usable.
keeper league, don't do that.
Well, I
Don't
would get
drop
rid
him.
of him even in the keeper league at the moment,
Maybe,
but
yeah. So,
he's
but
a guy that you keep an eye on.
in redraft, you got to hit the flush. Okay, got to hit the button.
Yeah, Anthony Volpe should not be on your team. He's rostered 42.7% of teams. He is on Team Childs in our league right now. So shout out to Team Childs. Yeah, Volpe's got to go at this point. I like him, but he's not producing for you fantasy wise. You're gonna have to find somebody else. Do you got somebody else that you're dropping
I
this week?
do, and this is a guy who was my pickup of the week just 2 weeks ago. All right, and that just goes to show how fast the roller coaster goes down. All right, and I'm talking about Christopher Morel. He was my pickup of like I said, a couple weeks ago. Second base, outfield. You like that combination a lot. This is what he's done. Didn't play. -2 points. -1, 0. Didn't play. Today he has 3 points, but that's not going to be enough to curtail, him getting kicked to the waiver jungle. All right, so, and it was nice while it lasted. He was as hot as anyone I've seen in a baseball in a long, long time. Because he hit home runs in 5 straight games, and it was just crazy. But that ride has come to a complete and utter stop. And so you're going to want to get off while it's down there, at the bottom. You don't want to take it up on the roller coaster where it stops at the top of the hill. Now you're stuck. So don't do that. If you've got them, kick them, get rid of them, add somebody who's swinging the bat.
I had a conversation this week. Someone said, "Hey, here's a trade I'm being offered," and Morel was in the offer. And I looked that up real quick, and I said, "I wouldn't do it for Morel." I said, "He's cold. He had his moment, but it ain't now." And I would not accept him in a trade.
I would not. Don't do it.
I'm going to go outfielder from Toronto, Kevin Kiermaier, another guy who had a hot streak going on at one point in the year, and that hot streak no longer exists. He's not playing every day. He's had 3 straight games with negative points. He's only had 2 good days in the last 15 days. So Kiermaier, for me, is time to get off. And he's only rostered by 3.8% of teams, but he's rostered in our league, Kevin. And there was a time that it was worth having him, but that time is no longer. And Kevin Kiermaier is a guy that, again, I would watch because he's already been hot once this season, so maybe he'll get it again. But at this point in time, it's time to let him go. Go out and get you another outfielder that can do something for you a little bit.
If you're going to watch Kevin Kiermaier, you want to watch him when he's in center field.
Yeah,
because he is a great outfielder, but you don't want to watch him at the plate despite the name Kevin. Don't do it.
Okay, all right. Those are my drops. You got any more drops you want to share?
I have just one. I'm going to switch over to pitcher, and we were talking earlier about guys that had like no wins and 1 win, and go ahead and they're pitching better than. But there's a guy who's 0-5 on the season. Okay, but he's got a 5.15 ERA, 1.54 WHIP, and he's on almost 30% of leagues. And I'm talking about Reed Detmers of the LA Angels. And so, but it's just not happening for him. He had 0 fantasy points last time out. Of course, he played against Houston, but still, you got to come away with some positive points if you're going to be a starting pitcher. All right, so Reed Detmers, I know he pitched a no-hitter, but that's way in the rearview mirror. So if you need pitching, add one of the guys that we were talking about earlier, kick him, pick up somebody else. You'll thank me tomorrow.
Yeah, I like it. I think there's so many bad ERAs this year. I mean, it is.
There are.
It's tough.
It's through the roof. It really is.
All right, let's get to some auditions, and I'll get us started. Okay. And I'm going to start in the pitching realm. It's a guy we've talked about before, and you've actually mentioned in this program this week. It's Baltimore Orioles, Dean Kramer. And I think I even maybe mentioned him last week. I forget.
I
But he's
highly
had
support wherever you're headed with this. I highly support it.
4 quality starts in the last
Mhm.
6 games. He's getting a decent amount of strikeouts. He's putting points on the board. He scored 21 in his last start against San Francisco. 6-2 on the year. He's got a 4.43 ERA, but that's actually coming down a little bit already. 148 total points, 54 strikeouts. It's not again, this is a points league. Kremer's good in the points. I don't think he'd be great in categories leagues, but in points leagues, he's giving you enough with the wins, with some strikeouts, with quality starts. He's adding some points up. He is not the best pitcher in Baltimore, but he is up there for sure.
But yeah, he's definitely roster worthy. I like that selection a lot.
All right. Who else you got?
Okay, so I'm going to move on to a guy who's on your team.
Uh-oh.
And he plays first, second, third, and he plays DH. And his name is Owen Miller. He's on 15.5% of leagues. But this week alone, he's had 2 hits twice. And so he's driven in runs. He's got runs. He's driven in runs in 3 of his last 5 games. He's scoring runs. He's stealing bases. He's got 2 steals this week. So he's giving you everything you could want, and he'll get you where you can get multiple positions covered. And so I picked him up. I dropped, we've talked about what's his name, Brandon Donnelly, or whatever his name is for the Angels.
Yeah,
Drury. Okay, my bad. Okay, so I like him at times, like we've talked about in episodes before, but it was time to say lovey to him. Hello, Owen Miller. And so, I like guys, like I said, that have this capability of playing different positions. He plays every day. And so get him if you need any kind of infield help. Owen Miller, Milwaukee Brewers.
I'm not sure if there was a guy who had a hotter May than Owen Miller. Now, he didn't get all the home runs that everybody else, so fantasy points, maybe not. But in real baseball, he was incredible the whole month of May. He's earned playing time, even with Willy Adames coming back from injury and other guys getting moved around. Owen Miller's going to stay in the batting order. You're going to see him whether it's DH, whether it's second base, whether it's outfield. They're going to find a spot for him. And until he cools off, he's a great guy to add to a roster for sure. How about this guy? He's owning 64% of leagues. So that's not your typical addition, but he's returning from the injured list this week, and so he may be available in your league. The San Francisco Giants second baseman and shortstop Thairo Estrada, returning, like I said, from injury. He's got 13 stolen bases on the year, 6 home runs on the year. He's batting .301 on the year. The kid has been really, really good, and once he returns, he'll be the everyday starter as well. So Estrada's a guy, again, 64% of leagues, which means he's available in 46% of leagues, or 36% of leagues. Go out and find him. Go out and get him if he's available. He's going to be well worth your time. He's got 111 points even with missing time with injury. So he's a good kid to have on your team. And he strikes out enough to be a little bit of a problem, but overall, he's giving you everything you need. So Thairo Estrada is a good addition to your team if you have a spot, and he's available. He's not available in our league because my dad's a Giants fan. He's already got him, but he is available in many people's leagues.
All right, so I'm going to go to a guy who pains me to talk about because he pitches for the San Diego Padres.
Oh.
But, just because he pitches for the San Diego Padres is not a reason not to have him on my fantasy team. I don't understand those kind of folks. Well, I won't have him on my team because he plays for, whomever.
Sure.
Are you trying to win your fantasy league or are you not?
Yeah.
So Michael Wacha is the guy that I'm talking about.
Okay.
And he had his worst starts in a month against the Cubs the other day. And he still only allowed 2 runs on 3 hits. He did walk 5 somehow or another. I don't know what in the world was happening there. But before that, he was pitching like a dynamo. And he's got the Seattle Mariners down in San Diego, and the Mariners are not as good a hitting team on the road. And so if he's available, which there's no reason to search for him if you're in our league because he's on my team, But if he's available, he's a guy who has come, not like Joe Musgrove, who's still missing in action down there in San Diego, but Michael Waka has at all the Padres, because they're a disappointing team in all of baseball. I don't think that's openly up to debate, but he has shown up because he's 5-2 on the season, and so if he's available, go and get Michael Waka right when we're done here.
Go snag him. All right. Now, this guy that I'm going to give you, this is a rarity for me. This is a guy that doesn't play every day. So typically I would say, don't even bother with this guy. But the way he's been playing as of late has caught my attention, but not very many people's attention. He's owned in 1% of leagues. He is a catcher, and he's for the Boston Red Sox, Connor Wong. He seems to be playing about 2 games and then takes a day or 2 off and then plays 2 games and so on and so forth. In his limited amount of time, he has 65 points on the year, 6 home runs, 15 RBIs. He's batting .240. He's crossed the plate 22 times as well. Again, this is a guy that has started to earn a little bit more playing time in a relatively weak situation, right, in Boston. They don't have a catcher that has tore anything up. Reese McGuire is the only other guy that scored fantasy points at catcher for Boston. So Connor Wong is the guy that's earning that spot and earning more playing time. Again, this is a situation where if you got you want to add a second catcher to your team, Connor Wong's the guy to put on the roster. And the way that he's playing, I think we're going to start seeing him get more opportunities behind the plate as the season rolls on in Boston, and therefore creates more value for you as well. So 99% of leagues, he's available. And if you need a catcher, he's a guy to look at.
All right. So last guy, I could talk about J.P. Sears, but I already did. So he's a guy that you could look at. But another guy who is only owned in 6.1% of leagues, Braxton Garrett, starting pitcher for the Miami Marlins.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of San Diego, he faced them the other day. 1 run on 2 hits, struck out 7, walked 1, 19 fantasy points. All right. And he plays tomorrow against, and we talked about bad teams. He faces the Kansas City Royals in Miami. There's not a better setup position you could possibly ask for than that. So if you need starting pitching, go and get Braxton Garrett. Wait till we're done. All right.
Sure.
And go and add him to your team. That sets him up for a 2-start week. I don't know who the second team that he would start against, but you don't need to be concerned about that, because you want people who are facing the Kansas City Royals, and Braxton Garrett is the next to do it.
I like it. Quick look at our fantasy league. Got to make sure he gives some props to my dad so he doesn't whine about it. He's going to win again this week. He'll be 9-0. One of his lowest scoring weeks of the year, 336 points. But he's still going to pull out the win as he got to play the 1-7 comeback season at Nathan Nguyen team. So he was able to dominate even with his lower scoring. Kevin Wilson, still a 1-loss team, going on 6 straight now after this week. Couldn't quite break the 400-point mark this week, but really, really close. He takes down Chase, who you co-host with on the Dynasty Football.
Yeah, we talked this morning about that, and as I mentioned to you before we came live, he added every available starting pitcher in America today, and it did not work out for him. Of course, he added Miller, one of the many Millers running around in baseball today, against the Texas Rangers, and that was set for disaster right from the very beginning. And as we mentioned, the Rangers have scored 27 runs in their last 2 games, 12 today. So that did not work out for Mr. Miller pitching for the Seattle Mariners. Didn't work.
Yeah, Bryce Miller, who I really like, by the way, 2 straight negative point outings in fantasy baseball against the Rangers and the Yankees. Coming off a 26-point performance against Oakland. But nonetheless, Bryce Miller's struggling. I'm going to keep an eye on that. I have him, I think, in 2 leagues and like him a lot. but he did
Right.
not do well today. Negative 13 points. But I'll tell you, I'll shout out to Chase. He put up 96 fantasy points today. And some of those guys he picked up actually came through for him
Came
too.
through, like Ranger Suarez was another guy that
Yeah.
we could have mentioned here. He pitched well. And the other Miller that we have, the Dodgers
Bobby
Miller.
Miller. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so he was facing the Yankees today, and it's currently 1-1 in the bottom of the 7th inning. So Mr. Miller for the Dodgers pitched well, whatever else may happen the rest of the night.
Hey, shout out Bobby Miller, by the way. He's got 41 fantasy points, 22 against the Yankees, 22 against the Nationals, 19 against Atlanta in the 3 games he's pitched so far this year. Only owned in 38.5% of leagues, and most of that has come over the last week where he's been picked up in 20% of leagues. So that's a kid that we should keep an eye on as well.
Absolutely. The
yeah.
Dodgers know how to produce rookies of the year, and they know how to produce pitching. So
I'm able to defeat the defending champ, Dan D'Amico. I was scared I wasn't going to be able to take him down, but able to pull that one out today as well. Our fearless leader, Mike Brown, co-owner, co-founder of Belly Up Sports, he gets another win this week as well over Drew Childs. And Nick Macaronis pulls out the win over Brennan Myers as well. So
Nick is who I play this week. So.
Okay. You and Dad are kind of running away with it at this point. Everybody else is close together fighting out for those last couple playoff spots when we get to that point in the season. So it's a fun league. We're having a good time with it. Again, it's a 10-team points league, and that's kind of what we're focusing on when we're talking through additions and drops and things like that as the year goes on as well. But anyways, it's a lot of fun. Dad's won 9 straight after this week. Kevin, you'll be at 6 straight after this week as well. No one else with a winning streak right now. I don't believe so. No one else with a winning streak. And Nathan Nguyen will be on a 4-game losing streak. Again, he'll be 1-8 at the end of this.
That comeback season isn't.
It has to start soon, right?
That's right.
It's got to start really, really fast. We're coming up. So we're in June. We're getting closer and closer to trade stuff. We'll continue to talk about that. Lots of injuries as well that we need to talk about as time moves on. A ton of injuries actually right now going on also. I know Giants put Wood on the injured list.
I saw that.
Bogarts is hoping to avoid the injured list, but headed that way. Wander Franco has been out for a couple of games. Plesac, by the way, got DFA'd this week for the Guardians to bring back an injured pitcher. My goodness, there's so many things happening right now, and we'll continue to talk about it each week right here live every Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time on the Sports Stove YouTube and Fantasy.
And we got it all. That's why you're doing it, and we appreciate it.
That's exactly right. Okay, Kev, what article you said you mentioned it earlier? What article are you coming out with this week?
Well, I got I wrote an article this past week called the first summer pickups. All right. And so I was taken back behind the woodshed pretty much. Well, none of these guys that you're talking about are available.
Oh.
None of them. Okay. So I decided that I was going to write an article about players that you can add that are below 10%. I took on the challenge. I've come up with some names, and that will come out tomorrow. And if those guys are not available in your league, I don't know what to tell you. All right. These guys are, it goes back to, Yahoo. And like I said, I don't have access to Yahoo. I don't care if I ever have access to Yahoo. So I don't know what the percentages are over there. So I don't know what to tell you. But another thing that I got taken behind the woodshed was I didn't mention a guy and you can tell me if you know this man, Ellie De La Cruz. You ever heard that name?
Yeah.
He's a shortstop in the Cincinnati Reds organization. And according to the people on Reddit, he is a mix between Alex and Derek Jeter and all rolling into one. Only problem is he has not stepped a foot on a major league field. And they were like, why don't you add him? Why don't you add him? Why don't you? He doesn't have a major league at bat. So people are a little excited, little coming loose about him. And so, you know, I don't have a room on my roster for a guy who has not even made his major league debut.
Yeah.
I don't
have room on my roster for a red, but let alone a guy that's not playing yet.
Right. So anyway, so that is, I took on the challenge, and like I said, it is a 10% below people that some of the ones that I've already talked about today. So that'll be coming out tomorrow. And I'm finishing up a pretty busy week because, you know, I do the show earlier on Sunday with Chase. I do it with you. Tuesday, I was on No Credentials Required. And I was asked this pertinent question. Well, actually, it was put out to the field, but I was all over it. What do we think about Michael Jordan's flu game? I was all over that. I'm not having it. I'm still not having it. I don't believe it for a second. And they put out a little snippet. They cut that, and, you know, and put that on the internet. So if you're wanting to know what I think about that particular game, you can check that out. No Credentials Required. Kevin Wilson. All right. And so that's out there. I did the NBA Super Show for Belly Up that we had the other day. So pretty involved out there. Just get over to the Belly Up Fantasy website. Check it all out. There's a lot going on.
All right, very good. You can find him on Twitter at Kevin62, Wilsea, and all his articles on bellyupfantasysports.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. I dropped the MLB power rankings for week 10 on bellyupsports.com. Do that each week. So you can check that out as well. I'll have live shows
right there.
Thank you. Live show both here on Sunday night for the Fantasy Baseball Show, Wednesday night with my dad on the Belly Up Sports Show, the Sports Stove podcast there as well. And then we've kind of taken the hiatus on the local hour for the time being with college wrapped up and everything like that. Not a whole lot to cover with EKU, but soon I'll be announcing summer plans for the local hour. Got some big stuff coming up, some really exciting stuff coming up for the local hour throughout the summer as well. All right, folks. Hope that you'll tune in next week. If you miss any part of today's show, go back and listen to the whole thing wherever you get your podcast, or, of course, on the Sports Stove YouTube page as well. Kevin, thanks again for joining, and as always, bringing stuff to the table. Thank you to Josh Mahler for joining us today as well. We'll see you next week. Until then, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.
That's right.